The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of a shadow. Elias Ward noticed it while revising a newly published translation of an obscure Slavic myth. The creature described in the original text of Forest Guardian, said to watch over travelers, had always been depicted as vast and imposing. Yet, as Elias reread the modern English version, the descriptions felt thinner, flatter, less precise. Outside his apartment window, the shadow flickered. It moved like something unsure of its own shape, stretching across the brick wall opposite his desk. Elias stood, heart pounding, and watched as the silhouette shrank, its edges dissolving into the evening light. Within seconds, it vanished entirely. His phone vibrated. Unauthorized narrative alteration detected. Report immediately. Elias closed his eyes. He had hoped never to see that message again. For years, he had worked as a freelance translator, specializing in ancient myths and oral legends. Officially, his job was academic, modernizing archaic stories for contemporary readers. Unofficially, he knew better. Words shaped reality. Stories sustained existence. When mistranslated, they weakened it. Elias returned to the text, scanning the lines that described the Guardian. The original used a word that had no clean English equivalent, something between protector, judge, and witness. The published translation had simplified it to forest spirit. Too simple, Elias thought. He reached for his notebook, already sensing the consequences unfolding beyond the page. Somewhere, a myth was unraveling, and if the creature had truly disappeared, it meant the damage was no longer theoretical. It was happening now. As the message on his phone pulsed again, Elias knew there was no avoiding what came next. The balance between myth and reality had been disturbed, and once again, he was being called to account for the power of language. The bureau existed in a building no map could agree on. Elias arrived just before dawn, standing before a narrow stone facade wedged between a bookstore and a cafe that no longer served customers. The door opened without a sound, as if expecting him. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and cold ink. "Mr. Ward?" a voice said. "You're late." Elias turned to see Director Halle, her expression as sharp as the punctuation marks embroidered on her coat. She gestured for him to follow as they walked past endless shelves filled with texts that seemed to breathe. "You know why you're here?" she continued. "Yes," Elias replied. "A mistranslation, a simplification," Halle. "Far worse." They entered a circular chamber where fragments of stories floated like ash. Images flickered within them, creatures fading, landscapes thinning, names losing syllables. "Every myth exists on a linguistic threshold," Halle said. "Translate too literally, and it becomes inaccessible. Translate too freely, and it collapses." Elias watched a fragment dissolve mid. "The Guardian," he said quietly. "It vanished." "For now," Halle answered. "But others are weakening." She handed him a thin, charred manuscript. Its pages were warm to the touch. "This myth is next," she said. "It's old, unstable, and dangerously ambiguous." Elias opened the manuscript. The language was layered with metaphor, each line branching into multiple meanings. A translator's nightmare and responsibility. "You want a modern English version?" Elias said. "For preservation? For survival?" Halle replied. "You have limited time. Every word choice matters." As Elias studied the text, he felt a familiar unease settle in his chest. Translation was no longer an act of communication. It was an act of creation and destruction. When he finally looked up, Halle was already stepping back. "Begin," she said. "And remember, the story is listening." Elias worked through the night. The myth told the story of a being born from fire and memory, a guardian of endings whose name shifted depending on who spoke it. Some lines read like prophecy, others felt like warnings disguised as poetry. He drafted his first translation cautiously, preserving the structure while softening the language. When he finished, the room trembled. Ash fell from the ceiling. Elias coughed as the manuscript glowed faintly, its edges darkening. Through the haze, he saw a figure forming, partial, unstable, its face blurred. "You have narrowed me," the figure whispered. Elias froze. "I clarified," he said, unsure whether he was speaking aloud or thinking. The figure recoiled, fragments of itself breaking away like burnt paper. Outside the bureau, alarms echoed. Elias revised quickly, restoring ambiguity where he had removed it. The trembling eased, but the damage remained. The figure lingered, incomplete. He leaned back, exhausted. Translation was not merely about meaning, it was about preserving uncertainty. The original myth thrived on what it did not explain. As Elias compared versions, he noticed how subtle shifts altered the tone entirely. Where the original invited interpretation, his English demanded conclusions. The manuscript pulsed again, slower now, as if breathing. Elias realized then that he was not translating a story frozen in the past. He was negotiating with something alive, something that resisted being fully understood. And the more he worked, the clearer it became. This myth did not want to be saved easily. It wanted to test him. By morning, Elias had produced 3 versions of the myth. Each told the same story. Each led to a different outcome. In one, the guardian appeared benevolent, guiding lost souls gently toward their final rest. In another, it became a ruthless judge, indifferent to suffering. The third balanced between the two, unsettling but intact. Director Hallé observed silently as Elias demonstrated the effects. Fragments in the chamber shifted with each reading, responding to tone and syntax. "Notice the verbs," Hallé said. "Agency matters." Elias nodded. Active construction strengthened the guardian. Passive ones drained it. "It's not just what we say," he murmured. "It's how decisively we say it." Time was running out. The unstable fragments grew dimmer, their stories unraveling at the edges. Elias focused on rhythm, next sentence length, cadence, breath. The original myth flowed like a chant, its repetitions reinforcing existence. His English version had broken that flow. He reintroduced echoes, parallel structures, carefully chosen redundancy. The chamber steadied. Still, the myth resisted final form. Every improvement carried a cost. Save one aspect, lose another. Elias felt the weight of it pressing down on him. Translation was no longer about accuracy. It was about ethics. "Choose," Hallé said softly. Elias closed his eyes. He thought of the vanished forest guardian, reduced by convenience. He thought of readers who needed clarity and myths that needed mystery. He opened his eyes and began again. Elias attempted a fully modern translation. Short sentences, clear motivations, familiar metaphors. The result was immediate and devastating. The chamber darkened as fragments collapsed inward. Landscapes folded. Names lost resonance. The guardian from the ash manuscript screamed, its form unraveling into sparks. "No," Elias whispered. Modern language was efficient, accessible, and lethal. By stripping away complexity, he had removed the space myths needed to exist. The story became readable and empty. Elias reversed course, restoring layered meanings, but the damage lingered. Some fragments did not return. "This is why we restrict modernization," Hallé said grimly. "Convenience kills nuance." Elias felt sick. He had wanted to make the myth easier to understand. Instead, he had nearly erased it. As he worked to stabilize what remained, the manuscript flared brightly. The room twisted, the floor dissolving beneath his feet. Elias fell. He landed in fire, or rather, in the memory of fire. Elias stood within the myth itself, surrounded by shifting symbols: ash, flame, silence. The guardian towered before him now, more complete than before, eyes burning with accusation. "You reshape us," it said. "You decide who we are." "I try to preserve you," Elias replied. "By choosing," the guardian countered. "Every word excludes another." Elias understood then. Translation was not neutral. It was intervention. The myth reacted to his presence, scenes rearranging themselves as if testing him. Each step altered the narrative. Each thought shifted meaning. To escape, Elias would have to finish the translation not from outside, but from within. He spoke aloud, blending registers, allowing ambiguity to breathe. He resisted the urge to explain. Instead, he suggested. The Guardian softened, its form stabilizing. As the world around him settled, Elias felt himself pulled upward, back toward the bureau. Elias awoke at his desk, the manuscript calm beneath his hands. This time, he wrote differently. He allowed archaic structures to coexist with modern phrasing. He preserved rhythm over simplicity. He trusted readers to engage, not consume. When he finished, the chamber glowed steadily. The fragments reassembled, stronger than before. The Guardian It remains, Hale said, relief evident in her voice. Elias exhaled. The balance had been restored, not by choosing sides, but by honoring tension. The final translation was imperfect, and that was precisely why it worked. Weeks later, Elias watched a new manuscript arrive on his desk. Another myth, another negotiation. The vanished forest guardian had returned, altered but alive. Stories had adapted, as they always did. Elias smiled faintly. Translation, he now understood, was not about preserving the past. It was about allowing stories to survive the present. He opened the manuscript and began to read, already listening for what the myth did not say. And somewhere, between words and worlds, the story listened back.